Welcome, Lisa Thompson, to this new episode of All That Jazz.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being on. So I know our mutual friend, Miss Stube, Julia. Sorry, I always mess it up. She recommended you, and it's not the same field that you gals work in, but that's what I like. You have a different perspective, and also see the UFO. What would you call it? Not it's not a blow up doll. It's something
Well,
else.
it's an inflatable.
It's okay. That makes it sound better. It's an inflatable UFO. There you go.
Inflatable extraterrestrial, yes.
Okay. Well, let's because that's the most obvious thing. So let's start there. How did this all begin? Because like most people, I've never seen anything, and I kind of want to. So, where did this start for you?
Well, so I have actually been an experiencer of UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena, I would say most of my life.
Mm,
And throughout my childhood, I had been on craft, but I didn't get to remember those experiences. And when I was 15, that's when I had my first conscious memory of actually being taken onto a craft. I was taken to Io, one of Jupiter's moons inside of Io. And when I got there, I was being toured around. So it was a different scenario than I know what I had had previously.
uh-huh.
And I had been more examined. And okay, so the situation,
Examined. What?
yeah,
Physically
so
examined.
yeah,
Did you
so
did you pass?
I did.
Okay.
Yes. So the situation was that when we arrived, number one, the extraterrestrial that had picked me up, he looked very human. So I was not afraid, but he also felt very familiar to me, like I knew him.
Hmm.
And so I wasn't scared at all. When we arrived, it looked like some kind of hospital facility. And so I was being toured around and everyone looked so human. So my next question to him was, besides asking where we were, and he said
Yeah.
we were inside of bio, was that um, I'm like, is everyone human? And he said, no, you all are human that we bring here, but we are not, but we disguise ourselves because our form is really extreme and we don't want to scare you.
Hmm.
And
Is
so
that why you can't from the Earth they can't see anything on probably they can't see anything on the moon? Is
well, they're
it like
inside,
disguised? Oh, the
they're in,
inside.
yeah, not
Oh.
external. So if you're not trying to go inside of a planetary body, then you're not going to see anything. And Io is the least likely of any planetary body in our solar system to have any form of life because the surface is so highly volcanic.
Oh
And
wow.
so it's completely toxic to be on the surface, but inside is fine. And so there's actually quite a bit of life inside of the different planetary bodies within our solar system.
Wow. And
Sure.
and like how do they know which like just simple things like because you were there physically, like you were not it's not just a dream, right? You were there physically, I
Well,
assume.
as far as I know, it was very physical. And so I'm being toured around. And so my next question to him was, why are we here? Why specifically am I here? And what he said was that those of us that had been chosen to be brought there were being tested to see if something happened to the earth, if we could live in an environment like that or something similar. And this is back in 1988, where we were
Hmm.
still in the Cold War. World War III was a big threat.
Right.
There really was a timeline where something really bad could have happened. And so
Hmm.
then at the end of the tour, I asked him if I could see what he really looked like, because I was always a very curious kid and I was obsessed with animals, and the
Oh,
weird animal, the better. So
right.
I didn't,
Did he have a robe on or something like that?
so it was more like a jumpsuit kind
Okay.
of thing. And, but so he went from looking very, very human, and they were humanoid. So they, bipedal, symmetrical, all that. So when he changed form, he was about 7 feet tall, pure white skin, big dark eyes, and long red hair. And then he had what looked like triangles tattooed on his cheeks. So very extreme in terms of
Wow.
appearance. And so I could see why they would disguise themselves or camouflage themselves,
Mm.
because they were completely benevolent. And so I came back home, and I remember laying in my bed, and this gets to the dream part. I remember laying in my bed, and there's a small memory of the craft being outside in my backyard. But I was laying there and I'm like, okay, that's the weirdest dream I've ever had. And so for a few months, I just thought, okay, it was just a dream, but I could remember details, which with dreams, typically within 10 minutes, you forget details.
Right, right.
Then fast forward a few months, I was reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but Whitley Strieber wrote about his experiences of being taken by gray aliens
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. And for him, it was a really scary experience. And so then at the end of the book, he's interviewing different people that had been taken. And all of them have the same kind of gray alien experience that Whitley had, except for one guy had a completely different story where he was telling Whitley that he had been taken to a moon of Jupiter and told he was one of the chosen ones. And Whitley
What?
made a little side comment, little side kind of sarcastic comment, I hope it isn't Io. And as soon as I read that, I had head to toe chills, tears started coming down my face. And so that was my body's way of saying, okay, that was a real experience. That was not just a dream. And
Because
then,
of the location, Io.
well, because of Io and the moon of Jupiter and just, yeah, the whole thing, like our body can give us information,
Yeah.
especially if we're really tuned in. And so then, so at the time, my mother and I, we were part of a spiritual school of enlightenment, the Ramtha School of Enlightenment.
Oh.
And we were learning about higher dimensional reality and things of that nature. And so I knew extraterrestrials were real, fairies, dragons, all of these things. And so I told my mom, after I realized, okay, that was real, I went and told my mom, knowing she would believe me, and she did. And our school at the time in the 80s was pretty high profile in the United States because we had a couple famous actresses that were part of the school, but also what we were
Like
learning.
who? That was it public?
Yeah, so we had Shirley MacLaine and Linda Evans.
Oh, Shirley MacLaine, I'm not surprised about because she's really big into past lives too and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. And so then Linda Evans, who had been on Dynasty and some other shows, she was pretty famous in the 80s. And so
Okay.
but what we were learning was the government was interested in, because we were learning things like telepathy and remote viewing and other things.
Mm.
So they actually had different government officials, CIA people, infiltrate the school to spy on what we were learning. Some
Wow.
people became real students. And so my mother, there was one guy that she knew that had been very high government, that knew about the different ET races that our
Uh,
government works with and knows about. So she
Wow.
introduced,
So the government knows about all this.
oh yeah. And
But when you let's go back a little bit to the experience. Did they ever because you said you were 15.
15, yeah.
Did they ever comment on, they like, oh, Reagan is making a mistake here or this and that. Was there ever like any kind of
There was no political talk, but also I wasn't asking. And this was in 1988. So we
oh
were,
yeah. I mean, it was a different time back then before social media and the internet. So it's like uh it's less likely that you would have been. I mean, you probably saw alien movies, the Spielberg movies,
yeah,
DT.
I,
That was in the 80s, right?
yeah,
Right?
I had seen Close Encounters and Star Wars and ET and all of those. Yeah. But this group though, like I don't, if I had to make up what an extraterrestrial looked like, it's not what I saw. Like I never would have imagined that there might be other humanoid types out there, but there are actually quite a few groups that are very humanoid in their looks.
And the examination of you, like, did they ever say what purpose did they examine you for?
But they were testing the physiology and the genetics to
Okay.
to determine whether those of us who had been brought there could live in that kind of environment, I guess perhaps inside of a planetary body, maybe inside Io itself, but something like that. And
Can you make contact and be like, yeah, let's go on a tour? And because it'd be cool to kind of fly around, but I guess they don't.
well, it actually, and that was part of the experiences I do remember flying through space. So the craft that I was picked up in was just a small little shuttlecraft that was just me and my ET guide.
Uh-huh.
And I remember as we're flying through space, so the walls are completely transparent where you could fully just see out
Oh my
into,
gosh.
and so you could see the darkness, the pinpoints of the starlight as we're passing through the different gas layers, just the beautiful colors. And so I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of the James Webb Telescope with the nebulas and the other things and how pretty the colors are.
Yeah, they are really pretty.
That's what it looked like. And so, my teenage mind had never seen anything like that. And so when my mom introduced me to this former government guy that was now
Right.
part of the school, so he knew about different ET groups that our government knows about and works with. I shared my story, and I thought he was going to just tell me, like, okay, no, that wasn't real, that was a dream or
Yeah.
something. But he listened, and when I described what they looked like, he paused and he's like, I don't know that group. He said, but there are so many out there that we don't know about. But he said, you had a real experience. And so at that point, I was 16, and having that actually validated as a teenager from someone who knows about those things, that they are actually real,
Wow.
was huge.
Do you know what position this person had in the government?
No,
No, it's probably like a covert operation that's not on the books or something.
probably. And he wasn't in the government at the time that he was
Okay.
a student at our school. He had formerly been in the government.
Oh, I
But
see. I see. Okay.
yeah,
So he
some of,
worked in that environment, so that he knew that the government knew about it.
correct. And
Huh.
so, so some of these people that had been sent to spy on us and what we were learning, they actually quit their jobs and became real students at the school. And
Okay.
so,
Is that
so
the same woman that was in What to Believe Do We Know documentary in
yes,
2004?
yeah, and actually that documentary was made by students from the Ramtha school.
Yeah, I find
All of,
that documentary to be infinitely fascinating. It was very, very
yeah,
cool.
yeah, I
And
actually know the
they use
people
a
that,
deaf person as well, which some my parents are deaf, so I thought it was very interesting from that standpoint. But so okay, let's do a little bit about the school, because I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that was in that school, and it seems nowadays seems very obscure compared to maybe in the 80s it was huge, but nowadays it's like I don't know anybody. I don't know
yeah,
anybody in that school
yeah.
except
So,
you.
well, and so Ramtha started channeling through Jay-Z Knight in the late 1970s.
Okay.
And my mom and aunt, they discovered Ramtha in 1985. And we were living in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, like right in the middle of the country, in the States, and nowhere near anything like that. But they started listening to videotapes and cassette tapes,
Right.
and they went to a live weekend in Denver, Colorado, which the seminar was called The Days to Come. And so during that weekend, and I didn't go to that event. I was, I think, 12 at the time that they
Right.
were
Maybe
events,
too
but
young. Too young.
yeah. So, but what they were learning about were things that were being prophesized that were going to come in the future, in terms of you need to have food storage, you need to live in a place that has a lot of rainwater, because there's going to be drought. You need to start buying gold and, really live off the land and be self-sufficient. And
That
so
was
this is,
true. Gold. If you bought gold back in the early 80s, you would have profited a lot.
yeah, you would have. So they came back from that weekend, like completely freaked out, like, oh my God, the world is ending. We have to move. And so they started looking at different places to move to, and they ended up choosing Washington State, and specifically Yelm, Washington, where Ramtha, Jay-Z and I were based. So we moved there in 1986 when I was 13.
Okay.
And so that's when I first got introduced to Ramtha myself.
Oh,
And
because she lived in the same town. So,
yeah. And
so
so,
you saw her often, basically.
well, I mean, she didn't go out in public, but you would sign up for one of the seminars and go to the house, the property. And so my mother, at first I was like, I don't know what this is. It's weird. This, is she possessed? What's going on? And because, channeling, that was not a normal thing, right? And so Ramtha, he's an ascended master from Lemuria, 35,000-year-old warrior from Lemuria, channeling through this lady. And so so when I went to my first,
sorry, what is Lemuria? I've never heard of Lemuria.
you have not.
No,
Okay.
I have not.
Lemuria essentially, it's also known as Mu. They're kind of synonymous, but it's the counterpart continent in the Pacific, like to Atlantis. So Atlantis is based, Caribbean, Mediterranean, Atlantic Ocean. Lemuria spanned from Easter Island to Hawaii, down through Micronesia, Indonesia, New Zealand, and maybe even to Australia.
So it's huge. Wow.
Massive continent. And so as a civilization, Lemuria started way before Atlantis did. Highly spiritual group of people, not a lot of technology.
Right.
And they were being taught directly by the Pleiadian star mothers, and just had this really harmonious community. So Atlantis was kind of the opposite of that. It was a much more masculine, a lot of technology, not as much spirituality. And when the people of Atlantis destroyed themselves, they essentially destroyed Lemuria as well, because everything was perfect. And so some people say Lemuria sunk. You could also say the oceans rose, but all of the islands that I mentioned.
So it wasn't like a continent that was there before, because I know the continent of the world was one time maybe almost all together, and then it kind of broke off. So it wasn't that, it was something else.
Yeah, it was just, so basically all of the islands, so Easter Island, where I live here in Hawaii, Micronesia, Indonesia, New Zealand, we are the mountain remnant tops of the Lemurian continent.
Oh, wow.
And so there are quite a few people who are drawn to move here to Hawaii and some of these other places that remember lives in Lemuria, parallel past lives. So anyway, so Ramtha was from the Lemurian continent. And because 30 years ago, it actually was still existing. And they were at war with Atlantis. And so
they were at war. I wonder why. What time frame is that of Atlantis and Lemuria?
So what he says is that he was alive 35,000 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
And from all the academic work that people do with Atlantis and Lemuria, that's very accurate in terms of it's still being, both continents still being there, the civilizations being there.
But they're already humans, like a human, like full on humans, and then something happened, and then they destroyed themselves. But then humans still survived on the other continents.
Yeah, so the survivors dispersed to other lands. Some of them went inside of Earth, becoming the inner Earth beings. So there's a whole can of worms there that we could go.
Oh my gosh, inner Earth.
And so, yeah, so there were very, very developed humans way before, what we know now, and way more advanced than we are right now as our Earth human selves.
But they didn't have like technology as such, but they were more advanced in other ways, like more metaphysical kind of civilization.
The Lemurians were more metaphysical. The Atlanteans had more technology than we do.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So, so you went to these courses, and you had to pay for these courses?
Yeah, it's just like going to any kind of school, or, if you're going to go see someone like Tony Robbins or any kind of you have to pay to go to those
But
events.
how many people were there? Because like if it's at her house, I imagine it's not it can't be more than like 50 people that were attending her courses.
So actually the first event that I went to, she had a very large house and a very large property, like acres and acres, because she had a horse farm. Actually,
Okay.
she bred Arabian horses with her then husband Jeff, and so big horse property and big horse arena actually on the property. And so the smaller events, what the first one I went to was around the swimming pool, the inside swimming pool, and there were 100 people at that
Wow.
event.
Okay.
Then the arena, the horse arena, the max that could hold was 1,000 people at a time. And so that would be the largest events, would be 1,000 people. But
Okay.
at the height of the school, there were probably over 10,000 students worldwide that were, part of the school, whether they lived nearby or they just traveled to
And
go to the.
she is still alive.
As far as I know, yes. I have not attended any events for the last 16 years. So it's been quite a while, but I don't know if she actively is still channeling Ramtha, or if some of the students that became higher up teachers, if they're the ones that are just teaching the material now. Because that
Hmm.
was starting to happen, when I left. Ramtha was still there. However, there were other people like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Are you familiar with
Oh,
him?
he's from that kind of school.
He
Okay.
actually, he was my chiropractor when I was a teenager.
Oh, what a
And
chiropractor to have, Joe.
yeah, well, and he was a student at the school, and so that's where he actually got his start.
But I
In
imagine he's not he's he actively still in the school?
Oh no, he hasn't been for years either.
Because I have
No.
heard somewhere that there was a change. I don't know if in the Night Lady or in the what they were channeling from before. Because I imagine the entity is still on the other side is still subject to temptation. So or stuff like that. So I'm not sure.
What's really interesting about the material is that there was so much really good information that was being channeled about quantum mechanics and the nature of reality, and just really how things operate. But then there was a lot of fear-based stuff as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what I did not like at all, was the fear-based stuff.
Was it as more towards the end of your being a
Actually,
student?
it's pervasive throughout, because even the original event that my mom and aunt
Oh
went
yeah,
to,
right,
I mean, that's pure fear.
right.
Now it's practical to a degree, if something like that's really going to happen, but it's also very fear based. And so there would be information sometimes that was channeled that I didn't know if it was maybe Jay-Z's personality trying to keep people at the school and trying to keep getting money, or what it was. But you know but the fear even created my aunt to be so fearful for me. Like, I wanted to move from our town of Yelm, which was a higher up elevation, to Olympia, which is right on the water, and it's only a half hour away. And my aunt was like, "You can't move to Olympia, it's going to be underwater." And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to take my chances, because I'd rather have happiness and choose where I want to live, rather than living in fear and not doing something like that.
That's interesting because nowadays people, for a different reason, think that the coast is gonna be underwater, but which I don't think it will. But yeah, it's interesting because when things become too much fear-based, then it's I mean, you can look at reality, you can look at facts, but then if something is too looking at the too pessimistic side, because there's been so many predictions about the world ending through the
Yes.
years, never
Yes.
came to be.
Well, right. And I mean, and again, like, when it's my time, it's my time. And I know that I'm energy, and that just this body will die, but Lisa, the soul of Lisa, doesn't die. So I actually have no fear about any
Mhm.
of that.
That's
Now,
good. That's good.
I have more fear about like getting hurt and then being alive and not being able to function.
Mhm.
So I'd rather, just die.
The, the, in the school, was there also like a meditation? Was there like classes on how to overcome fear and stuff like that too as well?
Yeah, there were, and that's the interesting part because Ramtha taught things like just it's quantum mechanics. All timelines exist simultaneously in the quantum realm. And so you can actually timeline shift. You can jump to different timelines. And my extraterrestrials that I channel, they say the same thing. And they're really adamant about this. And so there are realities where the earth really is like a shit show where things are going horrible and it is destroyed. But then there are also timelines where we actually are in harmonious community with each other and there's no more of the polarity. And so really what Ramtha taught and what my ETs are saying constantly is focus on the life you actually want. Focus on the timeline you want to be in, embody that, feel it, see it as if it's already happened. And the more that you live in that state, that is your reality. So you can have a next door neighbor that's living in the horrible fear-based reality of the world. And
Mhm.
then you yourself can be in this elevated state and you're living next to each other, but you're experiencing things completely different.
And it's something that really I've always struggled with this when they say different timelines. Does that mean that simultaneously there are, because when you change your mind about something, when you live differently, do you then break off and you live in a totally different earth than the person there? Because if you say somebody has a different experience, but that would still imply that they're still living in the same earth, same dimension, same space, just that their subjective reality, there's, let's say they Google search and their mind is searching for something different, so they always find something different while you're searching for something else, and you're always going to see something else, but physically you're occupying the same space, no?
Yeah, physically you can occupy the same space and have completely different realities that you are
Oh
experiencing.
yeah, but does that mean that when you talk about different timelines, does that mean there's a different physical reality or no?
And some of them are different physical realities. Yes.
Oh,
So I mean, everything exists, everything. There's nothing new.
there's
So
nothing.
so whatever choice you make at that choice point branches off. So then you're got these two different realities that are going on simultaneously. And which one are you consciously experiencing? Because they're both going on at the same time. And so then you make another choice, it splits off again. Okay, now you've got all of these other realities
Hmm.
going on. So which one are you choosing to be a part of?
You
They all,
know those movies Back to the Future?
yes.
Um, would that mean that, let's say last year the Argentina won the World Cup, but does that imply that in, let's say a player chose something different in the game, because there's 22 players in a football game. So let's
Right.
say it could be possible that France won the World Cup then in some other physical reality, and
Yeah.
that almanac from Back to the Future would be useless because you couldn't predict because it would be fuzzy, kind of.
Right. Yes. And actually, and that's the thing about we get to consciously create our reality. And so we're already creating our reality, but most people are doing it unconsciously.
Hmm.
They're just playing out their patterns, their normal life, just kind of sleepwalking through life. And then there are other people that are consciously like creating their thoughts and really choosing very consciously what they want their reality to be. And
Like
everyone has
Joe Dispenza. Sorry, go ahead.
no, exactly. Like, and actually, and that is what we learned from Ramtha was creating your day, creating your reality. And there are different methods to do that. So when you asked, yeah, did we learn meditation? we had a lot of different practices that we did to really hone that mind to be able to create our reality and also just to get other information. You know, there's a lot of blindfolded work that we did in the school.
Really?
Because the eyes, they deceive you, right? They filter, your brain has judgment. And so the more that you can tap into your third eye rather than these eyes and your other, you know, five senses, the more you can tap into the clairs, the more information that you can really get beyond.
What if the third eye is not open yet spiritually?
Well, that it's a practice.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is a practice. If
So
it was perfection, then we would be ascended masters.
right. Did Ramtha also recommend other teachers here on Earth, or was that
So
the main authority?
actually, that's a really good question. So there were quite a few outside speakers and teachers that would come in that would share their very specific research. So one example is Dr. Bruce Lipton. Are you familiar with biology,
Yes.
I believe? So in the late 90s, early 2000 area, Bruce Lipton came in and taught us at the school. And that's where I first got exposed to him, which I love his work. We had other quantum physicists and other people that would come in and share their information. And so, and we were, it was recommended and sometimes even required to read a lot of books on this material.
Wow.
From other
quantum physics.
So yeah, so and actually in the 80s it wasn't quantum mechanics at all. It wasn't that, it was more of the metaphysical, just the spiritual side of things. But then in the late 90s it turned to, okay, let's now learn the underlying science behind this spirituality. And so that's when we started really working with brain physiology, quantum mechanics, epigenetics, things like that. And at the time, I hadn't been a part of the school for a while, but that science piece is what attracted me to get back into it. Because at that time I had a PhD in biology. And so I was like, oh, yes, thank you. I really want
science. Yes.
I want, well, because, and my experiences throughout my childhood, my teenage years, you know, they were pretty incredible. And most people didn't believe me. You know, people at the school would believe me because they were having the same kind of experiences. But mainstream world, my mainstream science friends, when I went to grad school, they thought I was crazy, that I had, you know, had met extraterrestrials and that I believed in Bigfoot, you know, Sasquatch, fairies, dragons. They're like, you're supposed to be a scientist. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an open-minded scientist, knowing that there are these different dimensional realms that we can't quantify, we can't physically see necessarily in this earth reality, but they are real.
Would you agree that a lot of these things are in our reality, but they're not physical as per se? You have to, there's a different dimension to it, like fairies and all that stuff.
Yes. So yes, fairies, dragons, they reside in different dimensional levels that are outside of what our physical senses can perceive, unless we shift our own selves to their same vibration, and then we can experience them.
What about the I don't know what you think about guardian angels and stuff like that. Is that also a different dimension that they occupy?
Yes.
Because
So
I've known people that said that they have seen an angel.
Oh yeah, I have quite a few friends that actually work with the angels, that see them, that talk to them, channel them. So angels are real. Everyone has a guardian angel. Actually, everyone has a whole angel team. Everyone can ask for help from the angelic realm. And in fact, just like with the extraterrestrials, the angels, we have free will and we have to ask for them to help us if we want their help.
This is really interesting because you're talking about this, and also I've noticed that I had I talked to somebody that was this psychic lady, and she told me that I have this is before we're doing the interview, and she told me there's some UFO that I'm interacting with. I'm like, no, I'm not. And then I realized, oh, actually, I'm talking to a lady that's interacting with UFO. So even talking to you, then my question would be, then do you then interact with them on a regular basis?
I definitely interact with my extraterrestrials on a regular basis, because now it's part of the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so so the group from IO is not one that I interact with regularly. That was just, I think a former kind of situation that was going on, and
Right.
they are not the higher dimensional ones that I work with now. And so it was almost 5 years ago that I met my Arcturian family. So Arcturians are a specific group that come from the star Arcturus in the
Mm-hmm.
vibtations constellation, and they are higher dimensional extraterrestrials. They have blue skin, thus, so my inflatable here represents my Arcturians for
Are
me.
they any similar to the movie Avatar, the blue?
They have blue skin like that, but they're completely bald and they have larger heads and skinny bodies. So they kind of look like a gray alien, but with blue skin.
Okay.
They they reside in higher dimensional reality where they are pure unity consciousness, love consciousness. And so when I first met them, their message to me was, you are one of us, we are one of you, we're family.
Mm.
And I didn't know who they were, but I was in a psychic class that I was taking when I first met them. And so I was sharing with the class, like, okay, I just met these beings. There was a lady in the class who knew about some of the different ET races. And when I described what they looked like, she's like, that sounds like either the Arcturians or the blue avians. And so
Mm.
when I went and Googled what those were, because I had no clue, exactly the Arcturians, what I saw. So the artistic depictions of what they look like, it's exactly what I had seen in this journey. And so since that time, I have developed that connection stronger. Now I understand my role with them. I actually, in a parallel life, I am Arcturian. And so the being that I met is actually me as an Arcturian.
Oh, wow. That's
And
trippy. So it's you.
it's me. And so now, because I know that, it makes it a lot easier to channel, because it's not separate from me.
But
It's
it's
just,
like, it just blows my mind. It's you, but it's the same timeline. Like you are here making decision, but you can't make a decision for, because you're not. It's you, but it's not you. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
it's
Well,
trippy.
we're all multidimensional and we all have parallel lives that we're living right now. And so we can tap into those lives very easily, but you just have to know how to do it.
Okay.
One of the modalities that I do is past life regression therapy,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is, a form of hypnosis. And that's one of the ways that you can experience other lives that you have. And a lot of people, because we have a very dense, slow reality in third dimension as humans, we experience linear time, but in reality, time doesn't exist because it's all existing in the now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we get to the quantum realm. And so, even though people call it past lives, it's actually parallel lives because it's going on right now. And so I have been able to tap in to a lot of my extraterrestrial lives to
Mm.
experience.
So it's not
Um,
like timeline on Earth where it's the past, because I always assumed, because I've done a little bit of past life work, and it always seemed to be, for me at least, it always seemed to be on this Earth, but in the past.
okay, well, and some people do experience that. A lot of people, when they do a regression, they will go to an Earth life
Right?
that feels like it's in the past because, again, we perceive linear time. However, it's existing right now. So the 1950s, it's existing right now in a different timeline.
Oh,
And
could I
as
go back on the 1950s and be Like Back to the Future? Is that possible?
Yes. Yes, it
Well,
is.
how do I do that? I wanna see the 1950s.
I don't, and I don't think it's a machine, like they
Okay.
are, but it's actually everything is consciousness.
But you're able to go there physically, or are you able to observe? Because I'd like to, well, I'd have to learn the language, but back to the time of Jesus or Buddha, these significant events you could actually observe and perhaps make a better movie of it, more realistic
Yeah,
documentary,
well,
maybe.
and there are people who tap into that and get real information about those times because they actually do have a lifetime there. And so they're able to see it, experience it, and share it as if it's real.
Also, you have to have a lifetime there. That's how you can able to get.
Well, yes, and it might be possible that even if you didn't have a specific lifetime there, because you are connected to everything, I am
Mhm.
connected to everything, that there might, I think that there would be a way that you could tap into that information because it exists.
Hmm.
And yeah.
So it's not. So I wouldn't be able to travel physically. Is that? I'm just trying to see.
Well,
Could
there might be a way to take your physical body to that time, but it's way easier to take your conscious mind there. And the thing, because again, at the quantum realm, whenever someone experiences a life that they're living, parallel past, future, whatever it is, you have the opportunity to make changes in that life at that quantum level if you want to. And that's one of the ways that I work with that modality is to help my clients remove blockages and limitations in their life. And so we get to the root cause. Sometimes it's this earth life. Most likely, though, it's a different life that they have brought that kind of karmic, you know, information into this life that they
right.
are that want to heal. And so when we get to the root cause, we can rewrite the story, which then when you come out of the regression, it actually rewires the brain. Our
So
brains are very plastic. They get neuroplastic. They can
so
change very.
yeah. So the issues usually come from the past, and if you have you're healing people, and the issues usually come from the past, not the future.
Well, and again, past and future don't really exist. They do and they don't. We experience past and future as Earth humans.
Uh-huh.
But when we shift into those higher dimensional realities, there is no time. Everything is existing simultaneously.
Right.
So
But
it's,
for the purpose of healing,
yeah,
it's usually in the past, right?
yes, it's going to be something that you've already experienced.
Okay. Yeah.
But I have some of my clients, we have gone to future lives to see what that is like.
Oh man, that's just scary too. My mind cannot handle it if you go into the future. Because to me, I think it's there, but it's not. It's kind of like it's not rock solid yet. Because then, if you see it, you can, by virtue of seeing it, you can make a different decision. So what you see is actually a potential, not an actual hard rock
Correct.
solid reality.
Exactly. And when, like, if someone is going to go to a psychic and like, okay, Madam Psychic, tell me the future. Tell me what's going to happen with this situation. What they're tapping into is one potential, whatever trajectory you are currently on in that exact moment. That is what they're able to see. However, at any moment, you can make a different choice and be on a completely different trajectory.
Are
And
you
then
psychic?
I'm, I'm intuitive.
Okay.
And so that is a way of being psychic. I don't call myself psychic, but I am definitely intuitive and I get information in different ways.
So
But I'm not
you got
ever
information that it was good to come here then.
yeah. Yes. And Julia is someone that I trust. So when she said that you were a good guy, it's like, okay.
Oh,
But
so it's a social proof. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, okay.
actually, I generally am willing to talk, to have a conversation with anyone
Yeah,
as long as they're open-minded and they're not pushing a fear-based agenda,
yeah.
because that's one of my missions with my extraterrestrials, is to start changing that fear-based narrative of the government, media, and Hollywood.
Hollywood. Oh, let's talk about Hollywood. What has gone wrong with Hollywood? It used to be so many good people. Jimmy Stewart, all these George Burns, all these people that, good characters, and now you have that what's that Lady Gaga and all that questionable characters that's really. And she was working with that what's the Serbian lady that does art in blood and everything, Ivanovic or something, very scary lady. So we've come from Jimmy Stewart and that to now. Also also um yeah, character wise, I guess just not as great characters as before. Is that the problem, or is just the I'm thinking maybe the pedophilia or
Um, you know, that's not my realm
okay, okay.
at all. And so, is as far as pedophilia, that's something that has been going on since the beginning of time. I think it's just more out, in the spotlight. But definitely in the time of Jimmy Stewart and the other ones, there was pedophilia going on. It just,
Okay.
yeah, there's always been that underbelly, that darker side of humanity. And I think that what is happening is that it's coming to the surface so we can heal it.
Mm.
And that actually is what happens before massive change, before it always gets darker before the light. And we are shifting to fifth dimensional consciousness. The earth herself, she is shifting to fifth dimension. We as a species are shifting to fifth dimension. And in order to be able to do that, we have to heal the shadows, the darkness,
Mm.
and move out of that. And so I think that is why it's being exposed. It's our always existed though.
So there's a purpose though, that maybe there's more of it now because there's more in a way more darkness, or maybe it's in reverse, there's more light and then we can see the shadow that is the
Yes,
darkness.
I think so. I
Mm.
think I think it's that second one where
Okay.
also, again, we have to shine light on those dark areas in order for us to integrate ourselves, because
So
we all have dark and light in us, and it's each one of us has, it's our work, our job, whether we want it to be or not. And we don't have to do it in one life, but really it's to become a whole integrated being that understands. We don't need to be in the polarity anymore. But here on Earth, we're here to experience polarity, and it's a mechanism of evolution. And so in these higher dimensions, there is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. There's no more judgment of how people are living or what they are doing. And everyone who has whatever experience they come here on Earth to experience, they chose that. And that is really hard for some people to take in, believe. And if anyone is listening and you're like, no way, that's fine. This is my experience. And I'm never here to convince anyone that I know everything at
right.
all ever.
There
But
was a work with Michael Newton, and he said in his Life Between Life regressions that there is that you chose.
yeah, yes, so we have soul contracts with different people. I have a soul contract to be here with you today.
Oh,
I had
really? I'd like to
a
see the contract. No, okay.
um, we go through different lessons in our life. Some people have harder lessons that they want to experience to overcome, than other people. Some people have more of a vacation kind of life, like a break, because they've had a lot of hard
You need
stuff
a
going.
vacation sometimes, yeah.
And so, for me, I came in to really learn some heavy lessons that I could come out on the other side of and really like shine my light and really show people they don't have to be stuck in their reality.
Mm.
And so, you know, anyone who perceives that they're a victim of circumstance, they're choosing that consciously or unconsciously. They chose it before they came here, and they can change their situation.
You can always change, right? You can always start anew.
Yes.
I once had this dream where it was like this big book, and it's so what was written kind of was my life, and the thing that I could do was turn a new page, you know. It seems silly, but it was a positive message to me, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on my fourth career. I'm on my third husband. And
Okay,
so you can
is it
always,
at least is each one better? Is it getting better or worse?
yeah, yeah. Well, I have an amazing life now, but what I had done was I had repeatedly, because of abandonment issues and other things from my childhood, I was attracting people into my life that would recreate that abandoned feeling, or not being good enough, being worthy enough, not being lovable. And so, you know, my first husband, very toxic, like very, very abusive. When I got out of that relationship, I didn't do the inner work on myself before I got into the next
Hmm.
relationship. And so I just created, he wasn't as bad, he was a little better, but you know, he still had control issues. And so when I finally got myself out of that relationship, I knew I was the common denominator in all of these relationships. So I had to do the deep inner work on myself,
And he
find my
chose
word.
them too, and he chose them as well
Oh, I
because they
did. I
were
mean,
compatible on some level. They were
exactly.
complementing where you were in a way.
Yes. Yes. And so that can be really hard to look at and to, you know, actually acknowledge that, oh, there's something in me that is resonating at that frequency where, okay, that's what what I am attracting, because we can't have
Yeah,
any that doesn't match our frequency.
yeah. There was a Unity minister called Eric Butterworth, and he used to have a saying that it's not about finding the right person; it's about being the right person. And
Yeah,
I always find that to be hard to bear in a bit, but it's very true. You know, it's only when you become the right person, when you've worked on yourself, and then you're gonna start attracting those kind of level of people, right?
exactly. And so that's what I did. After that second husband, I worked on myself. I got to a place where I was whole, healthy. I loved myself. And that's when I met my now husband, was from that place. And so it's a completely different dynamic in our relationship.
And it's much much better.
Oh, much. Yes.
Did you? I'm guessing none of the husbands were from Ramtha school.
The first one was.
Oh, the first one was okay, but it still doesn't matter because there's other stuff at play.
Well, exactly. I mean, when someone comes from a household where their father is a raging alcoholic,
Mm.
extremely abusive, there's a lot of scarring that happens in the psyche. And as much as he was trying to do that deep work, you know, and was part of the Ramtha school, there, you know, it
It
wasn't
wasn't
enough.
enough. He didn't do
No,
anything like Al-Anon or like counseling or
no,
psychoanalysis or anything like that. Nah.
he was actually fully against that stuff,
Okay. Okay.
doing that kind of work. Yeah.
But
And so,
that's interesting because you would think that a person that does metaphysical work and spiritual work like Ramtha school would be at least open to other avenues that could help them.
you would think.
You no, right. And
Yeah,
but no.
but
Um
not everyone.
I'm curious though, is it possible like if you interact with the with other you know alien races, Is it possible that they transport some kind of rocks or something? That'd be very beneficial for them and you.
Well, the ones that I actually work with, they operate in a much higher dimensional reality.
Oh, so there's no
They're
rocks.
not physically densifying into our Earth reality. Earth is really hard to be a part of, especially if you reside in higher dimensions. It's very slow, it's very heavy. And so a lot of the higher dimensional ETs, they have the ability to densify, but they don't choose to. So it's really a
Oh,
point you yourself raising your vibration to find a meeting point where you can communicate.
is that how can you communicate? Because you raise your vibration and they lower theirs in a way. So you meet.
Yes, you
Mm.
meet in the middle somewhere, and with that, then you can have communication. And most of them use telepathy. We all have the ability to be telepathic. We just have to practice. But that's how they communicate
You know
with
what would
me.
be a good show of power, let's say, but I think people could misconstrue it. If you could predict, oh, you know, there's gonna be this desert there, there's gonna be a mountain appearing tomorrow. And then they drop a mountain on that, and people would be baffled, you know. They have to name the mountain and everything, you know, Mount Lisa, you know, or whatever.
Now there are ETs that are very physical. You know, they're more in that third, fourth dimensional reality like we are. And they do interact here on Earth. You know, they do come and visit. Some of them are living among us, and they have interacted with the governments around the world. But those are the ones that tend to be like Earth humans, a little more polarized. And
Mm.
so some of them are service to self, and others are service to others, just like Earth humans.
So it's possible then that there's bad races out there.
Okay, well, that's a really good question because there is, if we look at the human race, okay, we are polarized here on Earth. And so we have some people that are kind, compassionate, loving, giving people. And then we have people on Earth that are the opposite of that, controlling, power hungry tyrants. And so you can't put the entire human race as bad because some of the people are negative, right?
Right.
Or bad. So same with any extraterrestrial race. There is no race where the entire race is negative or bad. You have individuals within that race that might be service to self. And so our perception of that would be they're negative or bad. But you can't put the entire race into a category like that.
Okay, so let's see the Unity race then. I would suspect that the majority of them are good, and maybe there's some of them that are the troublemakers.
Yeah. Yes.
Did
Well,
they
and
ever
again,
get like in a prison? Like, you know, you ever watch Superman 2? They, you know, they put him in a glass prison, or you know, they just pull him out.
well, there are do you hear that background noise?
No, that's fine.
So there are, yes, things like that, from what I understand, where um, we have galactic federations, kind of like Star Trek. We have different galactic federations that are looking over Earth. They're not interfering directly because there is the prime directive of you can't go against free will. We have to ask for help. And so these galactic federations are making sure that the nefarious ETs, the ones that are more service to self, are staying away, or they're
Really?
basic. Yeah.
Oh, but okay. So, but then there's been people that have seen, uh, I guess in the astral realm, it doesn't. Uh, People have seen stuff, but it's in the astral realm, I guess, like really bad stuff.
Oh yeah, that stuff exists for sure.
But
And
but you're saying the nefarious aliens are kept away by the by this federation, and they kept away because they have their own, you know, fleets, I guess. Of is it kind of like Star Wars, like
Actually, well, and Star Wars is based on real stuff that happened in the Orion constellation, the Orion Wars. And so there really was like a dark empire, and there was a rebel small group of Jedi types called the Black League.
oh my
And
gosh.
so that Orion polarity, the factions, they actually that got moved here to Earth to play out. And so that's what we're here to do, is integrate that polarity from Orion, from the Star Wars scenario.
Wow, so that would mean that the movie was successful not because only because of the breakthrough in technology in that time, but because some people recognize the story that they've
Yes,
seen from their
yes,
past lives.
yes, yes.
Wow.
So George Lucas, it's very quite possible that he lived in the Orion system while this was going on, and so he pulled forth memory of that. Or he could have channeled it as well, but like it's more likely that he actually had firsthand experience and was remembering this without realizing what it was. Same
Wow.
Star Trek, right? Gene
Similar.
Roddenberry. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So a lot of our back to Hollywood, a lot of the movies are based on real things. So Avatar, that's there's a world like that. That's
Right.
really,
Of
yeah.
athletic like avatars running around and flying birds that connect with them and all that. That seems yeah, within the realm of reality for sure. And maybe they
Very,
even look the same.
yeah. It's really interesting because the more clients that I have coming to me in the last couple of years with regression work, they're experiencing their non-Earth lives more than their Earth lives. And that's the memories that are coming up for them. And so I did have a client who actually the body that he was in as this not of Earth being was very much like Avatar.
Mm.
This, but the skin, like it was striped, and it just the way that some of my clients have described physically what they appear like. I mean, all forms exist in the universe.
So
Everything exists.
perhaps it's possible that I only saw the human lifetimes because I that's what I believed in, perhaps. But they also
Yeah.
conversely that maybe people see other alien lifetimes because that's what they believe in. So it's then possible for them to see it.
Yes.
It could be either, it could be both. Both could be true, I guess.
Yes. And, within a session, some of my clients, we go to a couple of Earth lives, and then all of a sudden, then we're shifting to something not of this Earth. And sometimes not even a physical embodiment, it's more energy. And in fact, I have a life like that I got to experience where I was energy here on Earth as it was forming. And my job was to essentially let whoever the higher powers that be, let them know that Earth is ready for the animals to come in. So
Wow.
that was trippy. The other, one of my other lives that I got to experience through regression was being a Syrian being from the star Sirius. And the Syrians were directly here interacting with humans during super ancient Egypt, the Mayan culture in Mesoamerica, the Dogon tribe in Africa. And so the life that I got to experience was during ancient Egypt, super ancient Egypt, during the building of the pyramids, actually. Now, I was not helping the that, but I got to see what it was. But my job was as a genetic engineer. And so we were sending down sound frequency energy from our craft that would modify the human body naturally to be able to hold more energy. Because as we are evolving as humans, we have to run more energy through our bodies as we're shifting into the higher dimensions, because we're more energy than we are physical.
Right.
So we've had changes in our anatomy and our physiology over time as we've evolved as humans here on Earth.
So would you say that then the Jesus and Buddha are the highest energy that the human body can hold, because that's what I've
Yeah.
heard as well. Okay. And then, but then over time that might change in the future.
Yes, and we all have that potential to embody, that kind of consciousness, that kind of energy, and ascend, essentially take our bodies with us. And that's what we are doing, is we're shifting into fifth dimensional reality.
So, but is there a timeline for that? Is like
Everyone's
2025 or 2030 or?
Everyone is on a different timeline. So some people, they've already shifted, and
Oh, I see.
other people, it's going to maybe take a few hundred years or more.
But wouldn't there be an like objective, like the world somehow changing? You know how the culture, let's say the culture of America, which arguably since the 60s has not been going too much up at all, but maybe it could rebound based on the critical mass of people that have reached a certain level of consciousness, as it were, right?
That's what's starting to happen. And so there are going to be a massive group shifting into that reality, but then there are going to be others that stay back in old Earth. So essentially, just like these timelines, you've got different Earth potentials.
Right. That's
All exist.
interesting. So,
Yeah.
but how does that happen? How does the new Earth and then break away? Physically, how does that happen then?
Well, so I don't know if it's exactly physically or if it's just energetically, because
Ah,
right now we have things all around us that are coexisting simultaneously with us that we don't even perceive because they're in higher dimensions. And so it's going to be something like that, where, we're shifting into this higher vibrational state of being. Because we're in that higher vibration, we likely can see those lower vibrations, but they can't see us because we're vibrating at a higher state, a
what?
frequency where we become invisible to them.
Invisible, like literally invisible.
Okay, so the analogy that I like to describe this, and this is why, like, some of these other things that exist, like fairies and dragons, they're in a different vibrational reality. So if you imagine a fan, the fan is turned off. You can see each individual blade of that fan, right? You turn the fan on, and it goes faster, faster, faster. And at some point, the blades blur together. They almost become invisible. You can see through them. So imagine that vibration, that frequency going so fast that it just becomes invisible, but it's still there. So that's what some of these different entities, they're operating in that higher vibrational state. So we can't
Oh, wow.
physically see them, but they're still there.
That I love that explanation. That makes a lot of sense, actually, to that they're vibrating so fast. But then that would mean that we wouldn't be able to see the whole house or something. But then there wouldn't people be colliding in objects that they can't see, or wouldn't they? Would they would just go through?
Well, just like even though we feel very physical, very solid,
Yeah.
we're not, our atoms, we're mostly empty space, right? And so if we, and people, there are people on Earth who have been able to do this, if we consciously raise our vibration, we can actually walk through walls. Do you know the story of Apollonius of Tyana?
Mm,
He's a contemporary of Jesus. He's
okay.
Greek. And there was he was arrested. He was in a Roman court, handcuffed, and he knew how to do this. He raised his vibration so much so that he essentially became invisible and was able to walk through the walls of the courthouse and escape.
What was he one of the was he like a student of Jesus, or was he a different school?
I think it's probably a similar school, but not a student of Jesus. He was a contemporary, so he knew the same information that Jesus did, and perhaps they knew each other because they might have trained in the same mystery schools. because
Ooh,
Jesus learned.
that's a very controversial statement.
Well, okay, and that information comes from Ramtha as
Okay,
well.
right. Okay, I see.
So yeah, take it or leave it. But yes, I do believe Jesus and his mother Mary, they were part of mystery schools, learning all of this stuff, very esoteric knowledge.
And the mystery school and stuff like that, they also there's this healing that are you mostly doing like past life regression healing, or is there some other like energetic form of healing
So
as well?
yeah, I have kind of created my own modality that combines regression therapy with energy healing, with channeling from my extraterrestrial groups. It's a combination of stuff, and so I've named it quantum cosmic energy healing.
So you developed it.
I
You
did, yeah.
developed.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
just something that was given to me. Actually, that name was given to me earlier this year. I was inspired to put it through the trademark office because it's not anything that I learned from someone. It's just all these different modalities and things that I have studied with other people individually. But then this whole channeled information that I get that I didn't learn from anyone, I let it happen. And so that together combines this energy healing that I do.
Hmm. And is
And
so go ahead.
okay, what I learned about my life as an Arcturian is that life I am a healer. And so, but the Arcturians, they don't need healing for themselves because higher dimensional beings don't get sick. There's no disease at all. But I'm a healer to send that healing energy from that realm down to Earth, Lisa, to help heal my body. And then that also then gets channeled out to individuals to trigger their own healing within themselves.
So then you don't often get sick because you have this tool
Yeah,
at your disposal.
yeah. I very rarely get sick.
You ever did they ever comment on, I know they don't comment on worldly affairs, but the COVID hysteria, um what do you think about it, and the vaccines that came after that?
So that's a really good question. And I think there are going to be different answers depending on which extraterrestrial group you might ask about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my understanding for me is that COVID was a great reset in our world for a lot of different reasons. So the COVID pandemic itself. So for me, it was actually a beautiful situation that I never would have made the changes in my life that I was able to make if COVID didn't happen, because I didn't know it'd be possible. So for instance, I was living in Olympia, Washington, and it was fine there. It's a pretty place, but it's rainy and cloudy 9 months out of the year. My husband, he would get seasonal depression. We had always talked about snowbirding, to go to a warm place in the winter, sunny place in the winter. And when COVID shut down basically everything, his work became virtual. And we had the opportunity to re-examine our life and be like, okay, what do we really want? And my daughter, she triggered this. She was actually like, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to move to California. And I'm like, I said, I would never move to California. I said, I'd move to Hawaii.
Good
And it
call.
just came out of my mouth. And my husband looked at me and he was like, I'd move to Hawaii. And we look at each other, and 6 months later, we moved here to Hawaii.
Simple.
That never happened. And now, we live in the desert part of the island. We have sunshine every single day. And we have so much extraterrestrial activity here on island that I got to start doing UFO tours and be really out there with the work I do, which never would have happened pre-COVID.
Wow.
So it all depends on how you are interpreting a situation, perceiving it. And so as far as the vaccinations, this again, I know there's so much controversy out there about it.
Because
Now,
of the fake news, but yeah, let's go.
okay, so here's what's interesting. I was really on the fence. Am I going to get the vaccine or not? Now, I love traveling the world. Travel is one of my passions, and I have been all over the place. I'm getting ready to go to Peru in a couple weeks. I I decided, okay, I am going to get the vaccine because if they're going to make it mandated for travel, I'm going to get it. But when I get it, I am going to energetically protect my body that it doesn't have any ill things that go on. And so it's how you perceive it. And so other people who didn't want to get the vaccine, totally fine. But the people who took it and really energetically took it consciously, knowing that they were going to be completely fine, and whatever, perception of the negative side of it wasn't going to happen. And so everything is perception, everything. Yes.
But
that's what
then,
my say about it.
what about those people that that had a good belief about it, but still ended up being sick or had to develop heart problems? Wouldn't that signify that there's something objectively strange about some of the versions of the vaccine?
Possibly.
Okay.
Again, there are so many different truths to this. There's not one truth. Because again, we have choice, we have timelines. And so I know it's like, it's big ideas of like, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying it's neither good or bad. It's like it depends on the attitude of the people, and sometimes perhaps somebody had a vaccine contract or something. They get sick and die from the vaccine, and that's it.
Yeah, just like some people got sick and died from COVID even without the vaccine, right?
Correct.
I mean, so you can't, people, COVID was a really great opportunity for those that were ready to check out and not do Earth in this reality anymore. It was their easy way out. And so there are people who checked out who are not ready to be part of this, raising the vibration of this current Earth.
It's interesting because, well, as a part of human race, it wasn't actually a huge percentage of people that died, but it still seems that there's people like dying more than usual from the I don't know, maybe, yeah, there's the time to check out.
Yeah, and again, there is no, from my perception, there is no right or wrong. And when someone decides that their life is over, and only this costume is over, it's
Right.
not.
Yeah.
And so we keep changing costumes. It's like, what am I going to wear in this life? Oh, okay, I'm going to be a male. I'm going to be a dark-skinned male. Okay, in this life, I'm going to be a blue-skinned extraterrestrial. In this life, I'm going to be an amoeba.
Right. I guess I'm speaking from the values of, oh, they kill these people due to negligence or maybe intentionally and this and that.
Yeah, I like, for me, what my ETs remind me, Lisa, to do, and then anyone who wants to hear this too, is again, I got to focus on this environment first and foremost, because like we learned from Dr. Bruce Lipton, is the environment is what ultimately expresses your proteins. That's what your DNA is expressing, is based directly on your environment. And so, if you are in a loving, growing kind of environment in your mind, then your body has a beautiful ability to heal itself, to remain healthy, not get sick. But if you have a, more of a dying kind of mindset, negative mindset, that environment is going to create illness in the body. And so you got to focus on what you actually want in your life and live as if that is true.
Yeah, you know, attitude is always the small thing that makes the big difference in humans. Or maybe probably aliens as well. It's it's universal. Yeah, so let's talk just a little bit about the healing. So is it all is it, do you do any like energy like do you send energy, or how do you, are you able to perceive when somebody comes to you? Are you able to sense what's wrong with them already, or
Um, what I probably could, however, that isn't how I do my work.
right?
And so what I do is I have the person get really deep into, we basically pull the higher self forward so that the higher self can scan the body and know, okay, this is the area, this is what needs to be healed. And then in conjunction with that higher self of that person, then with my channel energy that I'm doing, then we are working in conjunction to clear that energy out.
Hmm. Are you able to do a general, like, I don't know, for people listening? Well, that would be is it possible to do any general clearing of maybe the immune system or something?
Well, for that's one of the things in the work that I do always is we're first and foremost balancing the chakras,
Okay.
the energy centers, because if those are out of alignment with each other, then the energy isn't going to be able to flow through the body. And so when we balance those, then the energy is able to run up and down the spinal column, go out to all parts of the body, and that's where the healing can occur.
Okay,
So the
so
body in balance.
okay, so you're able to see the chakras of the person when they come to you.
Well, actually, I am not as clairvoyant as I would like to be. So no,
Uh-huh.
I don't see them, but that's just part of this process that I take them through.
Okay.
So it's rather than it being a passive kind of energy healing like Reiki might be, the person is actively participating in
Mm-hmm.
this. Okay, one moment.
Okay.
My dog is
Yeah, oh, that's what it is. Doggy.
okay. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Normally, my husband let him in. So okay, we're back. He should be
Um,
not barking anymore.
and
Anyway,
yeah, so you're only doing mostly healing through, hypnosis, sounds like.
it's
The,
hypnosis, but it's also through light language, through my hands. I also have crystal singing bowls that I use as part of this process. So sound frequency healing. So it's just a combination, and it's every session's a little bit different depending on what someone needs.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, Lastly, the government, why do they want to cover up UFOs and stuff like that? What's the fear? What's the worst that can happen?
They have been lying to us for 80 years plus. And so if they finally, they now in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, the Pentagon of the US did come out and say, yes, this phenomena is real, but it got buried in COVID news. And so they have admitted it. They've
Okay.
actually released videos. They are slowly releasing more and more stuff, pretending like, oh, we're just figuring this out. Because if they admit, oh yeah, we've been lying to you, for decades, people are going to get really angry about that.
Hmm. Well, I think that some people already suspected it. I mean, there's so many documentaries and all that stuff about it, and people have said the same thing, or the government, or they're
Yeah.
covering it up and all that. It's like I've heard it said so many times, but I don't know what to believe really. I've not
Yeah.
never seen. Why don't they just come down and say hi and
Well, number one, we're not quite ready yet
okay.
as a global community because there are people that still have a lot of fear around it. And and even the government, even though they are admitting that this is real, they're also spinning it like we have to perceive it as a threat, you know,
Okay.
because they're not in control. And so what I tell people all the time about that is, these extraterrestrials, number one, they're our family. A lot of them are our family. We have up to 22 different ET races in our DNA. They do not want to hurt us. They're trying to help us not destroy ourselves, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really, every single person can have an intimate connection with an extraterrestrial group. They just need to know how to call it in and do that. And when we take back that for ourselves, then we don't need the government to tell us anything, right? And so, so yes, these things are real. If they wanted to destroy Earth, they have the technology that they could have destroyed it a long time ago before we ever developed our nuclear weapons. But in fact, they are instrumental in protecting Earth. They are often seen around nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons sites where they have been known to shut down nuclear weapons completely. They've also taken the sky when they have been shot off. So they can do it. They can intervene at that level, but they cannot intervene just by landing directly. But also a lot of them, because they are slightly higher dimensional, if they landed right next to us, we would likely go into a sleep state because their energy is too much for us to handle.
A sleep state. How about just for the camera? Are you able to go so dense that we're able to see them with the camera?
Yeah, actually, I have taken pictures of them, gotten video of them. We have night vision video of them, because one of the things that I do here in Hawaii is I lead night sky watch UFO tours, and we use advanced Generation 3 military night vision goggles. And those goggles, what they do is they amplify the amount of light that you can see. And so you can see the stars, the satellites, things like that. But then you can also see massive amounts of spacecraft out there.
Wow.
Yes. And so, yes, we have that on video. Other people get it on video. And sometimes, and this is actually really common, is that they're, like we were talking about, some of these beings being right here in our space, but we can't perceive them because we're not in that same frequency. There are craft that our phones, our phone cameras, video cameras can pick up that our eye doesn't see, because we filter it, we have judgment, but the camera doesn't have the same judgment. And so I have a lot of different examples of that, of a craft like showing up in a picture where no one sees it, but it's there, and because the camera got it.
And then even if you walk through it, you would not feel it. You would just walk through it because it's a different dimension.
Yeah, just like ghost energy. Yeah.
But they would be able to, because they're higher frequency, they're able to see you.
Yes.
Oh, that is trippy. Okay. I guess that's why they don't fly too close, because it would be kind of inconvenient for them if we just walk through their craft.
Yeah, well, and some of them are here again among us. So, we're walking through things all the time without realizing it.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. That's really cool. Let's see, before we conclude the podcast, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I would like everyone to know that, again, they really are these extraterrestrial entities. They are our family. We can invite them in, and the more that we consciously ask for them to come to us, and we work through our fear, work through the shadows, that's when we can actually have real communion at a more massive level, because the fear keeps us judging something as ugly or like scary or things like that. So we really need to work through that within ourselves and get over our own judgment of the way that things look, so that we can actually accept these things that don't look like us. Some of them do, but a lot of
Mm.
them don't. And
Is
there's
it
nothing that can harm you if you're in a high state of frequency. You have full control over what you experience. You have the power.
but then you could ask how to get to high state of frequency. Is that meditation? Is it inner work?
Yeah, it's inner work and meditation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you can help them with your work with the new healing modality that you've developed.
Yes. I also teach online classes where I help people learn how to raise their vibration and communicate with
With
these different
ah,
experts. Yeah.
awesome. So is it wow, telepathic or
It's some of them are more verbal, but the majority is telepathic. Yes.
hmm. Yeah, that reminds me, Rupert Sheldrake has experiments with dogs. Like the owners, if the owners have close connection with dogs, uh he would have it on camera, and the owner, once they decide randomly, they will have him out randomly somewhere, and they tell him, the owner, to go home, and the dog 90% of the time, from wherever they were in the house, they go to the waiting position. So that's confirmation of human animal telepathy, I think.
Oh yeah. Yes. And we can talk to plants, we can talk to crystals, to rocks. Everything has consciousness.
Mm. So you can
Everything.
talk to plants, grow more, please. I want to be healthy.
Yeah. Yes. They've done experiments where plants that are played music, if you play nice music for your plants and you talk to it and tell it how much you love it, they thrive. Right.
Mm.
Just like the water experiments, Emoto's water experiments.
Oh yeah,
Everything. Yeah.
everything is consciousness.
Yes.
Awesome. That's a good place to end. I know we had some, yeah, it's quite a lot that we covered. And thank you so much, Lisa Thompson, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching the podcast.